Good morning. My name is Edu-Pac, and these are my teammates.
Hi, I'm Rushil Roy.
Hi, I'm Charlie Gu.
And we're from Monte Vista High School in Danville, California. And we're Team Edu-Pac. And today we're here to present to you Cybersecurity and Corruption, a Preemptive Approach, which is our policy solution towards NGN's Goal 10, which is to promote ethical consideration and decisions, eliminate corruption and abuse of power in governments, businesses, and societies. For the judges, throughout today's presentation, please take the role of a policy evaluator and analyze the viability of our policy and analyze whether or not it would benefit from increased funding.
Currently, American elections are at risk of being corrupted by malicious foreign entities. But problematically, our election precincts aren't on the same page when it comes to election cybersecurity. In the 2016 presidential election, Russian hackers infiltrated voter bases in Illinois and stole the data of 500,000 prospective voters. However, the Center for American Progress explains that states like California, Texas, and Arizona, among others, were also targeted by foreign intrusion, but reported no breaches in voter data. It's because there's a significant amount of variance when it comes to cybersecurity strategies from state to state. States like Virginia, Colorado, and New York have already taken robust cybersecurity measures, whereas more than 10 states don't even train their election officials on how to adopt cybersecurity strategies. It's because of our lackluster cybersecurity collaboration that the Center for American Progress gives the United States a D+ average for national election security. When our voters realize their data is at risk of being compromised, distrust goes up and voter turnout goes down, thereby colluding the integrity of American democracy. If there's one thing that's clear, it's that our cybersecurity abilities aren't very strong when we're divided, but we have a lot more capabilities when we work together.
And that's the thesis of our policy campaign, which we're presenting today. Essentially, when the United States is divided, not only by states, but by individual municipalities, localities, and election precincts as to what the degree of election security and cybersecurity is, inevitably, that creates a discrepancy in the democratic process overall. So since our policy campaign is seeking to rectify this discrepancy, we propose multilateral collaboration across the United States. This would mean that states which currently have robust cybersecurity laws, such as California, Texas, and Florida, can now actually share information with states like Illinois, which are repeatedly succumbing to increased cybersecurity issues. As a result, as we've seen over 2.5 million cases of not only individual election precincts being hacked, but also of individual voter data being stolen, it becomes a necessity that everyone across the United States is on the same page, so that precincts in a state like Illinois have the same cybersecurity technology that's available to a state like Texas or California. Our policy proposal presents two distinct benefits. First of all, it would allow a larger dataset for research and vulnerability analysis. The current issue which exists is that a smaller state with less cybersecurity funding like Illinois doesn't have the ability to analyze their vulnerability to cybersecurity threats. But now that we're proposing multilateral collaboration, they'll have access to data which currently they don't, from states like California, Washington, and New York, which are all successfully able to ward off these cyber attacks, meaning that they'll be able to better prevent preemptively any further attacks. But next, when looking towards the merits of our policy campaign itself, we'll see that we have strength in numbers. Our policy campaign took a grassroots approach to ensuring that not only is change made on the national level, but that we're starting on the more reasonable local and state level so that we can build up while amassing voter support in the process.
But no policy campaign could ever be successful without some sort of backing behind it. That's why today we're asking for your legislative support behind our plan in the form of seed money. And throughout today's presentation, we're going to convince you that our plan is worth initial seed money of $15,000.
But since we believe our policy campaign warrants some degree of funding and seed money, let's see what we've done already with our current personal investment. Our empirical validation for our policy campaign comes from our construction of a mission-based political action committee, Edu-Pac. Right now, we realize that there were a lot of opportunities to connect directly with voters. Initially, we proposed an online petition or a change.org campaign. However, we realized that that might not be completely effective. A New York Times report from just last year points out the fact that 97% of change.org policy campaigns, while amassing some degree of support, never actually materializes in policy. It turns out it's a lot easier for voters to sign a petition online than actually write to their representative or state official about an issue that they care about. So recognizing that discrepancy, we took it upon ourselves to connect directly with voters through the organization of local level events, which interacted not only with individual voters, but also with politicians, which can promote actual legislative change. The numbers already speak for themselves. Over the course of just the past 3 months, we've been successful in organizing 6 events with over 450 in-person attendance across the San Francisco, Contra Costa, and Alameda County. If you look at the image centered on this slide right here, you'll see Mr. Malcolm Norrington as well as Catherine Kuo, 2 city officials in Dublin who we questioned about cybersecurity and invited our voters to ask questions along with them. We're getting voters engaged with the system so that they can be better informed about the issue and encourage them to write to their representatives so that we can promote our policy campaign from the local level and build up to the state level. That, in addition to our partnership with local nonprofits, makes our policy campaign not only viable, but already successful at promoting campaign on that local level and slowly building up. But additionally, since we're looking more deeply into the financials, let's analyze this one by the numbers. Currently, our personal investment into this campaign has totaled about $1,500. That totals our organization, registration fees, and promotion for the 6 events we've had already, as well as connecting with local politicians and getting endorsements from nonprofits. That $1,500 we want to increase to an investment of around $15,000. How exactly would that money be spent? Well, first of all, when looking towards the local events that we've already organized, we want to expand the scope of our operation. So we can expand outside San Francisco, Contra Costa, and Alameda County into Northern and Southern California so as to get a better statewide policy support. Specifically, our goal for the next 5 months or after the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic is over is to organize 2 events in Santa Cruz County, 2 events in Santa Clara County, 2 in San Mateo, and 2 in Sacramento, areas where the largest amount of voter engagement and support could be mobilized. We could viably see a lot more support. Additionally, promotional expenses might be a bit more since we're expanding out into a larger area, but $8,500 should not only cover more people to hire for volunteer work and things of that nature, but also expanding our already existing social media campaigns. The return on investment for our plan exists largest not only for individual voters, but for businesses. Because as more and more voter information data gets stolen with these gaping cybersecurity loopholes, businesses are the ones left suffering as their customers' data is left stolen and without the financials necessary to rectify it. So we not only help the democratic process, but also the financial and business-based one as well.
With that funding in mind, we also need to focus on the sales and marketing aspect and understand how we transfer policy into practicality. First and foremost, state governments can convene and discuss their respective strategies. This allows our entire nation to get on the same page regarding what's worked in the past and what hasn't. For example, Florida recently implemented a new cybersecurity initiative which could potentially be shared across the nation. However, due to our near inexistence of domestic cybersecurity collaboration, such cooperation is currently limited. As a result, when the state governments have pulled together the most substantive resources, technology, and information, they can then deliver it on to their state's respective election precincts. As Rushil said, election security starts at the smallest unit. And by ensuring that each precinct has the tools to ward off foreign intrusion, we protect the American democratic process. And regarding our specific policy, we've already been successful at mobilizing more than 450 local attendees with the 3 of us marketing on social media. However, with your seed money and additional support, we'd be able to create more physical and social media-based outreach campaigns, host more local events, and eventually garner local and political support across the nation.
But ideas to combat cyber attacks aren't new. But the thing that makes our plan especially unique is that it allows for domestic cooperation. Rather than just having individual cities building up their cyber defenses, by allowing for information sharing and destroying state lines, we allow for each and every city to have the same exact defenses, strong defenses to combat cyber attacks. And this is especially important. But to do so, let's take a look at some of our competitive advantages over our competitors. Let's take a look at 2 distinct ideas: contingency planning and limited collaboration. Understand that they both have the same exact flaws. Understand that a grassroots campaign is actually better. That's why we started as a grassroots campaign. Rather than building up to this large international scale, it's better to start off on the grassroots level, which is what we're doing, because we can garner more support there.
Altogether, our policy calls upon the collective strength and resources of the entire United States, and with your seed money and support, we'd be able to expand our policy campaign. Once again, we're Edu-Pac, and thank you so much for having us here today.
Hi guys, great presentation. I have a question for you. When you're doing these hyperlocal events, who are you specifically targeting? Which voters are you looking to engage? Because I think largely from the framework of communities of color, and many of us have a very long depth of issues with government entities and then voting suppression, voter suppression, redlining, etc. So I'm wondering how you're thinking about which populations you're engaging.
So that connects to a couple things that we want to do in terms of expansion with increased funding. First of all, one of the things we want to do is expand out into Sacramento County, one area with a minority population that disproportionately hasn't been represented in previous elections. However, with our funding and bringing a voice to their concerns, we can ensure that the voices that are most marginalized don't end up eliminated from our electoral process. And increasingly, what we also want to do is expand within the counties we're already involved in. San Francisco and Contra Costa County specifically, we can target communities all across southern San Francisco specifically, as well as West Oakland, areas where there are actually incredibly high levels of voter engagement, but not a lot of policy campaigns contacting them. By targeting them specifically and informing them of how they can make their voice best heard, we not only help our own campaign amass support, we help the voters themselves in protecting their own interests.
Hey guys,
Awesome.
thank you for your presentation. I'm still a little bit confused on how, here within California, we actually have fairly reasonable cybersecurity for voting systems, as you indicated. But a state like Illinois or other places may not have that. I'm not sure I understand how local support gets to solving the challenges, for example, in Illinois. Help me understand that.
Yeah, right. So a couple things we'd like to cover. So first of all, even though California ranks pretty highly in terms of all states in cybersecurity, there are still discrepancies which occur. And this connects back to what Charlie mentioned earlier. It happens more on the precinct and district level rather than across the entire states. You're right, California state elections are pretty secure, but certain elections like those in Yolo County in Northern California and San Mateo County, which we want to target through our expansion, have actually had reported instances of being hacked as recently as 2018. That's why we want to start at the local level so as to ensure that all of California is on the same page. But then what if we want to expand nationally? That's how our local-based campaign is going to increase further. After we amass some degree of uniformity across California, we want to encourage, like Charlie mentioned earlier, an entirety of domestic information sharing, meaning that not only can the information that California has be shared within itself, but also with other states like Illinois and Ohio. The issue right now is that those states have no access currently to ours, New York's, Texas, New Jersey's, any other state's information. But our policy campaign would mandate that that happens so they can protect their elections and we can protect ours.
Yeah, and to specifically address your question about moving from the local level to the national level, we understood that our campaign is like a grassroots campaign, and we can't necessarily immediately begin to contact the federal government. That's why we're garnering the support of first state and local political officers, and then we're going to move on to the federal level, who can potentially implement a policy from there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Well done, guys.